What if the person sitting next to you every single day was not who you thought they were? What if the colleague who shook your hand every morning, who ate lunch with you, who complained about the weather with you, was hiding something so enormous, so deeply personal, that the moment you discovered it, you would have to completely rethink everything you thought you knew about human beings? What if the man you knew had never been a man at all? This is a story about survival, about a world that closes its doors on certain people so completely, so finally, that those people have no choice but to build a door of their own. This is a story about courage that most of us will never fully understand, because most of us have never needed it. This will not just make your hair stand up. It will make you think deeply about identity, about freedom, about what a person is willing to endure just to live the life they were meant to live. Her name was Eleanor Vos, but for 15 years, the world knew her as Edward. Eleanor grew up in rural Pennsylvania in the 1950s, a time and a place where the rules about who you could be were not suggestions. They were walls. Solid, immovable, enforced by every person around you, by every church on every corner, by every father at every dinner table. Eleanor knew from childhood that something was deeply wrong, not with her, but with the space the world had assigned her. She felt it the way you feel a shoe that is the wrong size. Every single day, with every single step. At 21, after years of quiet suffocation, Eleanor made a decision that took more courage than most people will ever be called upon to show. She packed a single bag. She said goodbye to nobody. She took a bus to New York City, checked into a cheap boarding house under a false name, and began the long, terrifying, meticulous process of becoming Edward Vos. It was not simple. It was not quick. It required everything she had, every ounce of intelligence, patience, and nerve. She studied. She observed. She practiced her walk, her voice, her handshake, her posture, in her tiny boarding house room for 3 months before she dared to step outside as Edward. She read books on body language. She listened to men talking in diners and memorized the rhythms of how they spoke, the pauses, the confidence, the way they took up space in a room without apologizing for it. And then, one cold morning in January, Edward Vos walked out into New York City for the first time. He got a job within 2 weeks. A factory job, physical, demanding, the kind of work that required strength and silence, and nothing else. Edward was good at it. He worked harder than anyone around him, arrived earlier, left later, never complained. Within 6 months, he had been promoted to shift supervisor. His colleagues liked him. His manager trusted him completely. Nobody suspected anything. Nobody looked twice. Edward moved through the next 15 years with extraordinary care. He changed cities every few years, not out of fear exactly, but out of caution. He built friendships slowly and deliberately, never allowing anyone to get too close, always maintaining just enough distance to stay safe. He dated occasionally, but carefully, always finding reasons to keep relationships at arm's length. He lived with a discipline that was almost military, every detail of his life managed, controlled, considered. He was, by every external measure, completely ordinary. And that ordinariness was the greatest achievement of his life. The discovery came not through carelessness, but through circumstance. In 1972, Edward was involved in a serious workplace accident. A piece of machinery malfunctioned, and he was taken to hospital unconscious. The doctors who treated him discovered the truth. They were bound by medical confidentiality, but the information spread, as information in small communities always does, quietly, cruelly, and completely. By the time Edward regained consciousness, his supervisor was waiting outside his hospital room. Not with anger, with confusion. The kind of confusion that comes when everything you thought you understood about a person suddenly rearranges itself into a shape you do not recognize. What happened next was not what Edward had feared most. There was no violence, no police, no public humiliation. His supervisor sat down beside his hospital bed and asked, very quietly, one question. He said, "Why?" And Edward looked at the ceiling for a long time before answering. Then he said, "Because I needed to breathe." The factory let him go. That part was expected and accepted. But something unexpected also happened. Three of his colleagues, men he had worked beside for 4 years, men who had shared sandwiches with him and complained about their wives and asked his advice about their children, came to visit him in the hospital. They did not say much. One of them brought a card. Another brought a flask of coffee. The third sat in the corner and said almost nothing but stayed for 2 hours. Small gestures. But in that room, in that moment, they were enormous. Eleanor left that city and started again, as herself, this time. It was harder in some ways and easier in others. The world was slowly, painfully beginning to change. She found communities, found language for her experience, found others who understood without needing an explanation. She became, in the final decades of her life, a quiet advocate, not a loud one, never a public one, but someone who wrote letters and attended meetings and spoke to young people who were standing where she had once stood, looking at the same walls. She died in 1998 at the age of 67. She left behind a handwritten memoir that was never published during her lifetime. It was found by a researcher in 2011 and finally printed in 2014. The book's last line reads simply, "I lived." Against everything that said I could not. I lived. 3 words. And somehow they contain everything. Goodbye for now, and I will see you very soon in our next story. Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and never stop asking questions.